forgotten about, seldom talked about. Look like we just forgot about them. Or do we close our eyes and act like we don't see them? As some walk aimlessly through the streets, they're the ones who fell through the cracks as local and national government pushed them back. Not only inside, but the outside, as they continue to lie and close their eyes and deny them the rights and privileges.
Good evening. My name is Carl Poppers, also known as CP in the hood and throughout everywhere. I have two very distinguished guests with me today, Dr. Ernie Smith and Dr. Ernie Smith. I call it double up on the Smiths. One is a PhD and one is an MD, but very knowledgeable about what's going on here, especially with our health care system. And as you can see, the picture, or I was riding a motorcycle. I want to let you know that I am riding with you guys for the voices and the people that can't be heard here today. And I'm going to cut right through the chase. And my question is, my main question here is today, since I got you guys here, why do they want to destroy King Hospital when it was one of the best hospitals that ever been, as far as I'm concerned? I just want to know why, and I think the listening audience want to know. And before we go into this, I want you to know that this is live, and we do have a call-in number, and we encourage you to call in. The number you'll see across your screen, but just in case you don't, the number is 323-565-2800, 323-565-2800. So I would like to get right into what we're talking about right now. And Dr. Smith, if you don't mind, would you?
Well, the thing that you have to understand, that in the United States, we are considered to be very inferior people, uneducated, untrainable, but more than that, biologically inferior. Therefore, everything that happens with an African American must be subsidiary to Caucasian. So if a Caucasian has an IQ of 300, we can have an IQ of 250, but we can't have one of 301. So when you look at the things that represent what they consider to be intelligence, King Hospital was the pinnacle of education in a sense. So it means that you were bringing together black people with degrees in all fields, okay, professionals who were going all the way through the medical cycle, the nursing cycle, through technicians of all kinds of areas. So you had then a university within a university, you might say, okay? Now, first of all, we were coming from a period when you had segregation and you weren't allowed to educate. Everybody wants to know, well, when did you get the education and where, and how'd you do that? And that was against the rule, you follow? So then the first thing then is King becomes a beacon and a hope point for young black people to look forward in South Central Los Angeles and the state of California that it is possible, being poor, to go to college and to go to medical school and to go to the top of your field or go to nursing school or whatever else you want to do, x-ray technician or whatever, and reach the top of your field because you have examples now of where that worked. So one of the first things we have to do is pull that down, because if we educate a whole battalion of young black children to become doctors and nurses and et cetera, they will go out and get jobs, and for every one of them that gets a job, there's one white child ain't gonna have a job. So that means then these children are competing against my children, and I want my children to get the benefits of what America has to give, and then whatever's left can go to somebody else. You follow? So the first thing then is that we've got to get rid of King, or we got to control it. Well, King is controlled by the black consciousness. Even though you have a lot of flunkies and all that kind of stuff, still it's a black consciousness that controls King. But if it's a black consciousness that controls King, then you can't control King unless you control the black consciousness. If you can't control it, you got to get rid of it. Or else then you'll find that you're seeking a job in the medical field and you got to go to a black man to be hired. That's a no-no. And then if you get hired, you got to work under a black man. Like Fleming was in charge of the surgery department. If a white man wanted to come into surgery or a white child wanted to be trained in surgery, it'd come through Fleming. That's reverse discrimination in a sense. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that becomes very, very important. When you look also at King Drew, King was also training all of the physicians who are coming from other countries who are trying to now get the licenses and get to practicing medicine in the United States. Well, most of the hospitals and places would prefer not to have them, okay? So they were thought then, as these foreign doctors were concerned, that they were not really up to snuff. King accepted them very willingly. So that means then we were training a lot of physicians from Asia, from the Middle East, from South America who were going to be the physicians for their communities in the United States. But for every one of those guys that came in, or ladies that came in and stayed with their community, whether they be Iranian or whether they be Thailanders or whatever, they were working with their community. That means one less American is going to be working in that community. So it becomes an economic problem. So King was a kind of bleeding point. King was very important because of what it did for the community. King oversaw that South Central community. It watched the gang violence. It analyzed that gang violence. It watched the police from an analytical point of view. So it began to go around and teach where the problem was. We were teaching who the real enemy of the community was. It wasn't Blood and Crips. Blood and Crips have no consciousness. They didn't organize themselves. That came out of the United States government. And so when you begin to look at the consciousness of it, it's a white consciousness. And it's been coming through the police departments of the United States. Okay? Now, if you really want to get to the bottom of it and get rid of this gang thing, you can't be fighting black children coming out the projects. You got to go to Washington, D.C. and fight the Pentagon. But who's got the nerve for that? Do you understand what I'm saying? See, so if you keep teaching that kind of thing, if you keep understanding and beginning to unravel the so-called mysteries of the inner city, you begin to change the nature of the inner city until they become responsible. So then they can hold their property. They can begin to build on their land. They can begin to educate their children. They can walk down the streets without fear. They're in control of themselves. They're in control of their destiny. Okay? And that was where Martin Luther King Hospital was going, and also the Drew School. You had to chop it down because it was working contrary to the economics and the structure and the future of what white America wanted to see for itself, without any obstruction from black America, and also what it wanted to see not to happen in black America, so that everybody can move without obstruction.
Very well said. Can we just get your take on that?
Well, once the decision is made that they're going to destroy it, you can see it occurring in other areas of the community. The housing projects, Jordan Downs, Nicholson Gardens, Ujima Village, Hacienda, you have these housing projects that exist in the community that they're destabilizing and totally destroying, moving the blacks out, accusing the kids of belonging to gangs, giving them gang jackets, all of these things that are going on. They've even planned to put Target stores on parts of the property and things. There are plans already underfoot to remove blacks through what we call gentrification from the South Central Los Angeles community and turn these housing projects into condominiums for the medical students. They're planning to privatize King Hospital, give it to the Catholic charities, and put it under private ownership with nothing but white students. And so that's the aim and objective of the hospital, the agenda of the whites. And we see what's happening in terms of the destruction of Martin Luther King Hospital.
Right. And if you look at that area, then that would no longer be a black area, nor would it be a poor area. It'd be a middle class area. So a whole complete change. Now, the important point is this, coming from the black perspective. What would happen to our people who would be displaced? Well, the whole point is go down to Julian Street and down to 5th Street and see. There's your future on the pavement. Homeless. Okay? Now, the important point about homelessness, they keep running at you that the folks who are homeless are mentally ill or on drugs. That's not true. The major point about homelessness is you ain't got no job. You can't go in a home sober or drunk without money. Okay? And you can be as crazy as a bed bug, and you got money, you got a place to stay if you want one, but you can be as brilliant, you can be Einstein with no money, you're going down on the pavement. So my point is, if you understand that it's not about the condition of the individual on the pavement, it's the thing that drove him to the pavement.
In the first place.
In the first place. Okay, now if you without a home and without a job, you'd almost be a fool to be still sober. Okay, in your 15th year and you still sober, what you waiting for? So what I'm getting at is, you see, we're being deflected in our mindset and getting a nasty attitude towards certain conditions that will arise within an individual who's been clobbered without looking at the things that caused the clobbering. And therefore we don't treat the clobbering. So where can a poor young woman with 4 children who's living in the projects, and if she's getting a job, it's so minimal that she can't even afford a loaf of bread, where can she go if she's been put out the projects and find a home to live with her children? And she don't even have a car that she can live in.
Exactly. I would like to say this too on that note, that I deal with a lot of the homelessness, and a lot of people, just like you just said, where would they go? A lot of them take their babies to the bridge and send them off over in there, and the girl that took the baby and let them jumped off the courtroom building. I say by tomorrow being Veterans Day, and I'm seeing more seniors, more young people, and more veterans in these doorways and sleeping on these pissy sidewalks. And to hear you guys talk about the healthcare system and how it's being destroyed, basically, and I ask why, I just want to know, in your Dr. Smith words, could you tell me what kind of the community, what kind of great effect that's going to have on a lot of these people that you say, most people say King see the sickest of the sickest people, and these people that I see that's exposed to this stuff and maybe smoking crack or whatever they're doing, they are the sickest of the sickest, and these are the people that need to access this hospital they destroy.
Okay,
so could you tell us?
The very first thing let's do is establish as a basic premise, nobody cares, okay? In other words, if you look in the, I doubt that you can read the obituary column, do you? Most people don't.
Right.
Which means that I'm not interested in who died. You follow my point? Let's not make the mistake to think that if you tell somebody, we see the worst of the worst, the sickest of the sickest, who cares? Then if you understand that, then you understand the saying, well, why didn't so-and-so was able to take better care, or certain things weren't able to happen in their lives, you see? You go down to the pavement, you mentioned about the veterans, and they're usually now about 50. They came out of Vietnam crazy. They gave them drugs in Vietnam. They saw things that just bottled their minds, right? When they came home, nobody dealt with that young man at 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, he was young and handsome. A lot of girls would marry him and endure his illness, right? Or he went home to his mama and papa and endure it. Now, by the time you get to 50, your mama is dead, your daddy is dead, so they ain't nobody you can fall back on that. And the girl that you married a long time left you 20 years ago and she realized you're crazy. You understand what I'm saying? So my point is now you have to bite the bullet at 50 and hit the pavement, because during the time when you were able to get something that would move you forward, there was nothing there for you. What does that mean? You were written off the day you signed the paper to go in. Okay? Now, if you happen to come out intact, then you can go in and get a 4-year scholarship to a university and enter the regular market. If you came out with stress syndrome or some other syndrome that prevented you from working, if you didn't get on drugs, then you can hang up with your mama or hang up with some lady until such time as that support system fell apart, and then you're on your own. Now, my point then comes down to this. If you look at what's coming down for us, many of our youngsters then, before they can even get to the pavement, go to the jail. Because you just can't be on drugs and go to the pavement. You got to be on drugs and go to jail, then you get to the pavement. Am I right?
Pretty much.
That's the stepping stone, right? Well, now the point then is this: at some point in time, you get into jail, and as the time passes on, especially if you start knocking down things around King and you knock down King, the jails get overloaded with people. They can't make enough license plates, and they can't make enough furniture, and even at making a nickel a day, it ain't gonna be enough. What you gonna do with all these young people in jail? You wouldn't feed their children from a baby born out of wedlock from 1 to 18, you cut them off the welfare, right? But you got the daddy in jail from 25 to life, and you're gonna feed him for 25 years? I don't think so. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about genocide. And at some point, then, we have to understand that genocide is the bottom line. But as long as you have strong institutions like King, if the church would wake up, then they can begin to be the buffer zone that begin to look over the community, do the things that are necessary for the community, open the eyes of the community, make change in behavior in the community, and also make inroads into the master's group in order to make change with them. You follow? But when you have no institutions like King, then the people as individual citizens are trying to make something happen on an institutional level, and they cannot do it, okay? Like one mother going to the school to fight because it's a bad school, and she's trying to fight for her child and try to get something to happen for her child, and none of the children are learning, and the school doesn't teach anybody's child. Your child is no better than nobody else's, and nothing's going to happen.
Well, Dr. Smith, I would like to ask you, and I've been knowing Dr. Smith for quite a while, ever since the 70s. Could you explain a little more of what Dr. Smith was saying and tell us, as we go on to want to assign ourselves to being a part of trying to come up with a solution to this, even though like you said, it looks like nobody really cares, but we do, and I have a right to care because I am one of the uninsured people. So could you tell us what our role should be and give us a little more about the hospital and to make us aware of what's going on and what role we should play?
Let's deal with who's doing it, because the solution has to deal if you, as an expression in medicine, treatment without diagnosis is malpractice. Okay? So what we have to first do is do an adequate or accurate diagnosis. What we're doing now is talking about conditions, what I consider the destruction and privatization of King Drew Medical Center. And in my analysis of the things, I lay the blame squarely at 313 North Figueroa. There's a white supremacist administration that's governing everything that goes on at Martin Luther King. And the destruction of Martin Luther King is being perpetrated by the administrators at 313 North Figueroa. Well, you say, well, they're not the boss, the board of supervisors. Yes, and I particularly want to name Zev Yaroslavsky as the perpetrator of what's going on, because he's the shot callers. All the rest of them are marching lockstep into Zev Yaroslavsky and the West Side Mob's agenda. Okay, the destruction of Martin Luther King Hospital is a part of the West Side liberals' agenda. And I see it happening because I see what's going on at the hospital. The Drew University is virtually taken over by UCLA. The people at Cedar Cyanide, and I said cyanide as opposed to Cedar Sinai, okay? Cedar Cyanide is virtually controlling everything that's going on now. So between the push of the university to be run by Cedar Sinai and the West Side Mob for research on and using the blacks as guinea pigs, and the hospital being run by the Catholic Charities, because the Catholic Church got to pay for all these little babies, little boys that these priests done raped, that the collusion is in and the white supremacist agenda is on the way.
Well, Dr. Smith, I'd like to ask you a question. I heard Lieutenant Murray Dimerly, a congressperson, whatever Lieutenant is, Murray Dimerly is now, at the Billingson hearing, I heard him say about when we was going through this crisis with the emergency room and stuff, how they couldn't, wasn't supposed to take private funds, and I'm gonna say county funds, and give to a private hospital, but yet still, my understanding is they did that with building another emergency room or trauma center at, I think it was California Hospital. Can you tell us how that works, or you care to pass on that?
Well, you know, you make a law according to what you need, and then whoever makes the law, that's who has the power. Yes, they have the tax that everybody's paying for the trauma centers on everybody's bill, right? And that is being distributed to the private trauma centers.
Part B.
Yeah. And what you find is that a great number of the trauma centers are coming from Catholic Charities, and they are going to get money for running trauma centers. And so I don't know how that works in terms of separation of state from public or whatever it is, but there you have it, okay? Now the point being that you shut down King's Trauma Center, and it was one of the best in the country. You shut it down under pretense that it was necessary to save the hospital, which obviously it didn't do. And then whatever monies it generated and whatever monies the King Hospital could generate would now be distributed into the private sector. Now, I have a problem with this whole thing, because when they privatized King Hospital, the group that they're already working with are the Catholic Charities. Now, if you got the Catholic Charities looking at King, which is one of the top money makers in the country, and you look at the trauma centers and the money that's coming off the taxes of the citizens in the trauma centers, a great chunk of which will go to the Catholic Charities, then I'm saying that the Catholic Charities are raising a whole lot of money. And I'm looking at their problem right now. They've just built a new temple, which it costs a lot of money, and they haven't reined in their priests or little boys, which is going to cost a lot of money. So I'm saying then is much of this dealing with trying to forestall bankruptcy in a group and using black people again as the guinea pigs by which you take what they have in order to save the system. In other words, are we back to the original slave consciousness where we are the ones and everything's going to be off our back? So there's a lot of things to look at, but you know, as a people, it's one thing to say we're concerned about people being sick, but what you going to do about it? You can't just go to a rally once, okay? You just can't go downtown and sit down and woof at the table one time. You can't wait for a politician to come and organize you into behavior. Do you understand what I'm saying? You must recognize the importance of the institution you're complaining about. You just can't go to church and praise Jesus and expect that he would sit there and okay you when you won't even help the sick by fighting for your hospital, and you in there praising his name, giving him higher praises for what? The man is so sick of you don't know what to do. So my point is the churches have to come alive and believe their own gospel. And if they don't believe their gospel, they should shut down and become casinos. So my point is, until the community becomes organized around the issues and understand the nature of the issues, the bottom line being genocide, then you might as well go out smoking, man.
Dr. Smith, PhD, can you feed us a little bit in your own words on just whatever you would like to share with us about this situation right now?
Well, I want to share with the audience that this is a live show and they should be calling in if they have any questions about what we've discussed so far. I reiterate that there is a conspiracy to destroy and privatize King Hospital. And I see that conspiracy underway. Navigant is an organization that was hired by the County of Los Angeles to come and manage King Drew and to get the accreditation back. They've just been given an additional $5 million and an extension of their contract. The hospital presently has 60% of its nurses as visiting nurses. They're not going to get their J-code back, and it's doubtful that CMS is going to give them further approval for Medicare and Medi-Cal payments from the federal government. So they're going to lose the accreditation, and they're being paid over $20 million to do what they're doing. What are they doing? They're getting rid of niggas at King Drew Med Center because the Catholic Charities don't want to have nothing to do with them.
Well, I'd like to ask this question real quick to him. We do encourage you to call in. The number again is 323-565-2800. That's 323-565-2800. Dr. Smith, either one of you guys grab this. I heard people talking about once the billing, say the billing system was kind of twisted. When the bills go out and then when they come back, it's a whole different story. Do you think that, did that have anything to do with the destruction perhaps of the hospital in the setting? Could we let the public, can we share that, anything on that with the public?
Well, Martin Luther King gets funding from basically two sources. The Medicare reimbursements from the CMS. It used to be called HICFA, Healthcare Finance Administration, but now it's called the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The other source is what they call DISH money. This is DSH, disproportionate share hospitals, are hospitals that get reimbursed for funds to fund the care of people who are totally indigent. When the indigent who don't have any insurance and don't qualify for Medicare or Medi-Cal payment, then that money is given to the hospital. The DISH money never comes to King direct. Well, it comes to King directly, but the check, $67 million and up, $100 million a year of DISH money alone goes to 313 North Figueroa. The Chief Finance Officer for the Health Department is Gary Wells. That money goes into a pool, and the King Hospital never sees that money. In terms of the billing that you're talking about, King never does its billing. Billing at Martin Luther King is done by CBO. That's the Central Billing Office on Ferguson Street. The bills are bundled up and sent downtown, so they never know how much money they earned or how much they lost. Okay, it's sharecropping. You go and harvest the crop, and the boss man comes and says, "We didn't make enough money this year, Moles. We're going over there to the old store, get you some red soda pop and some watermelon, some sorghum for your kids, and we'll see you do better next year." This is the relationship that exists between 313 North Figueroa and King Hospital. The sharecropping.
Well, Dr. Smith, I'd like to ask you, Dr. Smith, MD, it's been word on the street and around town that you go beyond the scope of just being a doctor and trying to help the hospital, how concerned you was about the community and some of the things you do on your own time and the things you're involved with in the community, and such as, you know, the football games that you did and the, what you call it, the golden thread and stuff. Could you, if it's possible, if it's okay, could you share a little bit?
Well, let me say the first thing. When I first started looking at gang violence and decided that it was not an adolescent event, but it looked like it might have been more of a non-black, adult, white event, probably governmental. When we began to go out and start talking and teaching that, you know, and we began to hold press conferences about that, then I was accused of not practicing medicine. Mm-hmm. And that I was not in the hospital doing doctrine when I was out in the street talking about this. And my major point was this: whenever anything causes death in an individual, that is a medical problem. Mm-hmm. Okay, and whether or not the child arrives at the hospital with a gunshot wound or dies in the street, he is a medical problem once he is shot. Now, if we do preventive medicine, what should we do? See that we have better ambulances to transport them after they're shot, or should we prevent the shooting? Mm-hmm. Okay, so my point is I have to prevent the shooting. You can worry about the transportation. Thatcher comes 20 years later and they decide that gang violence is a medical problem. It's a health issue. Well, if you were trained properly, you would have known that from the very beginning. Now, my point then is that there are three parts of the individual: the spirit, the soul, and the body. Right? Illness occurs at all three levels. The church deals with the soul, but what about the spirit? What about the body? So my point then is that we have to begin to look at trying to do healing in all three levels. So some of these kids start off being spiritually ill, okay? And then they finally get to the point where their souls get sick. You follow? Some people start off with their minds getting sick from the body, which then affects the spirit, or the spirit affects the mind. So it's all those things. You can't handle that sitting in an office in a hospital. You can't handle it in an operating room. So that has to have multifaceted, multi-level activity. So it means you have to have activity in the street, you have to have activity in the home, you got to have activity in the church, in the school, wherever it is. But that's a physician's job, okay? So you expand the concept. It's not about pushing drugs for the drug companies. And it's not about making brilliant physical diagnoses so that you can rise higher in the totem of medical science. It's about going out amongst the sick, okay, and healing the sick. Now, if you come from a Christian point of view, you already have an example. Do you follow my point? Now, if you take that example and put it with modern science and the wherewithal of the 21st century, we should be doing some powerful medicine. And that's what is needed in the African American community because we are sick on all three levels, and slavery has had a great deal to do with that. Plus the manipulations and undermining that have come from government after government, Republican, Democrats, Whigs, Tories, anything they want to call themselves, it don't even matter. They're the devil's disciples. Okay, and they've done a job on us, and we have to then begin to practice from that point of view.
Very well spoken. I'd like to give my little shots out right now to my family, my girl, and Grandma Hands, all those good people that helped make these kind of discussion possible because they trained a lot of these people that was in it on the training. But I would like to inside and out, the soldiers that's out there that's struggling for this cause, and I'm so glad to have these people. And I'd like for Dr. Smith, PhD, to take us out. Y'all share it, you know, in just in my closing. I don't even want to come back with the close. I'd just like for you guys to take it out from here.
Well, I would encourage people to get involved. We meet every Monday at 1 o'clock, the Black Community Health Task Force, and we're still on the point to save King Drew. And we need people to come and understand what the issues are and what we're doing. A lot of the things that we're doing is a part of a grand strategy, and therefore they need to come to our meetings every Monday at 113th and Central, 11311 South Central.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. On that note, we do have a caller. Caller, you can ask the question or comment to either one of these people, Dr. Smith or Dr. Smith. Caller, are you here?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know, I've been following the board meetings, and it looks like you're right on point with your assessment that it is the Board of Supervisors that have run this place in the ground. And I'm looking at how they've gone out and spent millions for help to get it on track, and it's just really, it just looks like it's spinning out of control, and people are getting paid, but the community is not benefiting.
I hate to rush your call. We have 1 minute. Can you pose that in a question right quick for us?
Sure, sure. What can we do as a community? I'm looking at the meetings that they're doing on Monday. How can I get involved?
Well, I'll say again, you can get involved by taking the attitude. I'll quote H. Rap Brown. He said, the white folks want to play Nazis. Black folks ain't going to play Jews. I'll say that again. If white folks want to play Nazis, black folks ain't got no business playing Jews.
I'll give them that address again at that meeting place before we go.
11311 South Central Avenue. Again, 11311 South Central.
Okay, we'll take that and we'll run with it. We have ran out of time. I wish we could do this show every day. But anyway, again, thank you to my very distinguished guest that keep me running on regular as well, has brought me up into the point I'm at now. So thanks again, and I hope we can come back and do this again. Thank you very much, and that's Up to the Minute, raw and uncut. Peace.
Often forgotten about, seldom talked about. Look like we just forgot about them. Or do we close our eyes and act like we don't see them? As some walk aimlessly through the streets, they're the ones who fell through the cracks as local and national government pushed them back. Not only inside, but the outside, as they continue to lie and close their eyes and deny them the rights and privilege afforded to all citizens. And not all of them are winos or drug addicts. Can't vote because they have no address, but continue to pay taxes while health care for them are lax. Their living quarters has no doors except for abandoned buildings.